broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location deep within the Swamplands. This is Tales from the Swamplands, an old swamp-styled radio show curated for your contemporary capacities. I'm Benjamin Gaunt, author, disc jockey, speaker of truths, purveyor of fanciful fallacies, and all-around scholar of our dear metropolis here in the Swamplands. Welcome all listeners, new and old, to the somewhat inaugural episode of Tales from the Swamplands. I say somewhat, of course, because the other 348 episodes of this show were discovered, erased, and, expunged from history by our esteemed ruling class here in the Swamplands, the Fold. For those of you not in the know, our city's great prosperity and technological superiority is primarily due to the Fold and their religion of, progress, capitalism, and unquestioning loyalty. Oh, and secrecy too, hence the erasure of this show's previous entries entirely from the web, as well as from my previous residence, which has also been compromised. So, a safe house or two later, and here I am, and here you are. We're back in the saddle and ready to get into what makes life in the Swamplands so unique. I like to start things off each episode with a topic for the day to keep our eyes on the prize, so to speak. This week, we'll keep things in the macro, a warm-up lap for all the inevitable inanities and flights of fancy I will no doubt take us upon in the weeks to come. This week's topic is the Swamplands. In the region known to the scholarly types as Citheronia, this city-state is situated deep within the vast Evermarsh. Much of its land is comprised of a singular cypress dome, known as the Dome. Clever, right? It should go without saying that humanity sits quite solidly near the bottom of life's measuring stick, both literally and figuratively. Can't step outside without the faintest worry that we'll be crushed by a pine cone or gobbled up by some bullfrog. No taller than a walnut, we are oft overshadowed by the sundry fauna and flora this fantastic world has seemingly pit against us. So it goes. Well, the dome makes those behemoths seem minuscule in comparison. Its trees tower above us, some over 650 stories tall. The vast majority of them are uninhabited, though, save for some errant critters and beasties. The exception being the majestic diamond spires at the city's center. Each cypress tree-turned tower represents one of the four major districts of the capital. The Capitol Tower, the Kaleidoscope, the Plant, and the Hive. And now, the settlement has grown from about 100 to, let's call it 10 million, shall we? A nice round number. Life rarely gives us things in a neat package, so it's good to wrap them up yourself whenever you can. Speaking of which, let's wrap this segment up, with a few more tidbits about the Swamplands, shall we? The region's major exports are its technology and bugs. The latter are caught and bred daily, making the Swamplands the premier hub of bug trade in the known world. Catching them ain't for the faint of heart, as these critters are well adapted to fend off the foolhardy catching caravans scattered throughout the dome. Thing is, most bugs can range from 1 to 15 feet long. But worse are the myriad of defenses each new beastie has to offer. Be they hardened shells, massive pincers, camouflage, or toxins. It takes a second to swing a bug net, but a lifetime to fully grasp the danger they can pose. This is the part of the show where I'll sometimes clue you into some pertinent piece of news about the goings-on in the region. But with the format as it is today, let's say our hunger for news has been satiated. This show still existing, me safely holed away in some bunker, invisible to the Fold and not black-bagged and carried off by some wasp-mounted specter? We're gonna let that be the good news and call it a day. Instead, let's dive into a new segment in celebration of this not-quite inaugural episode of Tales from the Swamplands. It's an episodic story in the style of old swamp radio shows about a detective whose adventures throughout the Swamplands will test his mettle, his smarts, and damn near anything else he's got lying around. He's an investigator whose general lack of planning and foresight gets him into all sorts of trouble. Find out for yourself in this actual inaugural episode of Neil Silva, Private Eye.
Strap in, dear listener, for another episode from your favorite intrepid investigator. He roots out the plots of evildoers and rights the wrongs committed daily against the everyday Swamplander.
Life in the Swamplands is hard enough. It gets a lot harder when you're flipping over rocks looking for trouble. I'm Neil Silva, Private Eye. I may not always know what I'm looking for, but boy, can I flip a rock.
Prepare yourself once again for another gripping tale of Neil Silva, Private Eye.
Noon on a Tuesday. The traffic of beetles hums low in the streets of the Swamplands. Rain patters against the window of my office. Well, bedroom. It's kind of a studio apartment, office, bedroom combo. Pull-out couches are worth their weight in gold around here. The detective business has been slow as of late. Too slow if you ask me. Like a snail in a 23-shell pileup kind of slow. Not that it's ever busy enough for my taste. If I could help it, there'd be dozens of gorgeous clients battering down my door day and night like a swarm of roaches on a hot fudge sundae. Ugh. Gross. I just need that one lucky break. I'm gonna nab a big catch soon enough. I can feel it. That helpless citizen is gonna walk through my door any moment now, or my name ain't Neil Silva, Private Eye. All right. Better go find a lead myself. Maybe over some sliders. I'm starving.
Table 3 needs their fries. Can't look like we're lollygagging around here. Thank you, Cynthia. Let the kitchen know we'll be getting in a rush shipment. No rain checks, but servers... Oh, hey, Neil. Hold on one second. So, you don't want to get... Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just use whatever stock we have. Taken care of. What can I do for you, darling?
Hey, Marge. Wanted to check up on you. I know you can get cooped up in here on rainy days. Figured you'd want to see a friendly face.
Right. Oh, me? Of course. I'm cooped up. So this ain't about food or rent or nothing?
No, of course not. Do you need any help with your business? Maybe you need me to buy some sliders off you to help pay the bills? Or help lift some boxes or clean up? I know how boring it can get around here these days.
Right. Neil, do you need a job?
What? No way! I'm just making sure you're doing okay, especially without your husband around. It can be taxing to run a business on your own.
Oh, you're checking up on me. Sure. Well, I'm divorced, not a widow, and despite being nearly twice your age, I'm doing just fine. Better than ever, actually. I feel like I can finally expand like I've always wanted to, now that my lazy leech of a husband is gone. And you? How's the investigation business going?
Oh, it's great. It's so good. Checking up on a lead in a bit, actually. Just wanted to make sure that you're doing...
Darling, I serve over 300 customers a day and have a full staff rotating through here faster than a record-breaking flip book. If you need anything, we can talk more after dinner rush. Grab a couple sliders from Javier on your way out the door.
Sure. Right. Thanks. I'll,
Yep. See you soon, hun. Good luck on the job hunt.
It's not actually a job. Great. Thanks.
Oh, and rent's due this week. Let me know if you need another extension.
Yep. Thank you, Marge. Marge is a fine lady, that's for sure. She's like the grandma I never had but always wanted. I feel bad for her and her husband, though. I mean, sure, he tried to embezzle funds out of their business and she crushed him with the law's iron fist. But being cooped up like some caterpillar can be real lonesome. Nobody to talk to, getting on in years, and not sure where you're heading. It can drive a detective mad. Or a business owner. Right, that's what I meant. Well, maybe a little fresh air would do her some good. It's doing me wonders.
Hey, watch it, buddy.
Life's wonders. Anywho, let's swing by the half shell and see if Terry's got any leads for us. Crime never sleeps, so neither do I. Sleep. On crime, that is.
Hey, Silva, how's it going? Any good catches these days?
Nope. Sorry, Terry. Nets and traps are empty as ever. I'm actually looking for any leads right now.
All right. Leads on a possible case?
More like leads on any case. I ain't hurting for work too bad, but if you knew of any crimes happening...
I get you. Rain does a number on cops and robbers, right?
Sure, let's go with that.
Well, I got some tidbits if you're interested.
Of course. Order me some tids, extra bits.
Well, things have been a little weirder than usual around here, right? Mrs. Murphy's coming in 2 times a week now, instead of just the one. And Rocco switched from ordering a bourbon to a gin fizz.
Right.
Not to mention, have you noticed the lights have been flickering? I wonder if the power company is throttling our flow. Could that be a thing?
Probably, definitely not.
Oh, I forgot. There's been a series of sketchy figures roaming this block in matching blue robes. The lady at the end of the bar came in earlier asking about them. I told her they're creepy and bad tippers to boot.
Why didn't you lead with that?
Ah, right. Slipped my mind. Guess I ain't cut out for the detective life.
Hey, we all have our strengths. And one of yours is making cocktails. Can you whip up 2 of whatever she's drinking and send them down the bar? I'm gonna do what I do best.
Investigate.
Investigate, right. I saw her from across the bar. After, of course, Terry pointed her out to me and informed me of her relation to the investigation at hand. She wore a pair of business slacks with a business blazer on top of a business button-down. She wore businessy reading glasses as she read some dry business-looking documents from her business notebook. She was all business. But so was I. I wasn't at all interested in her toned arms and legs, her lithe fingers, or her perfectly coiffed flaxen hair. Nor was I focused on her slender, androgynous figure, or her pouty lips that look like they could talk for days and never get tired. All business. I sat 2 seats down from her and whistled nonchalantly. As she turned to me with a quizzical look on her face, I realized that nobody actually whistles when they're without other motives. That's just what they do in the movies. Damn.
To what do I owe this pleasure?
The pleasure's all mine.
It is indeed.
2 apple cider vinegars on the house.
Thanks, Terry. Wait, what?
Oh, you a fan? I'm not much for drink myself. My body is a temple.
Oh, sure. Me neither. My body's more of a pawn shop. Things come and go, but I'm in it for a good deal.
All right. So, what brings you over here then? Trying to haggle a date or what?
No, I'm actually a detective. Neil Silva, private eye, at your service.
Regina Gray, aide to Senator Alan Dermott. Thank you for the drink, but I must be off. I have other business to be attending to shortly.
Sure, of course. I was just wondering if you knew anything about any blue-robed weirdos. Word is, they've been creeping around this part of town as of late.
What? No, I was just stopping in for a drink.
Hey, watch it, buddy.
And even if I did see one, why would I care?
Well, because one just took off out the door with your notebook.
What?
Come on, let's go.
You got this, Silva. Investigate.
There he is. Damn it, I need that notebook.
Don't worry, I'll get him. You stay here while I nab this goon.
Oh, no, you don't. I can handle this myself. And anyways, you don't want to mess around with them.
So you do know them?
No, it's just...
All right. We'll both get him. I know a shortcut. Come on. There you are. Where you going, Cornflower? I can pick you out of a crowd easy as a dime store bouquet.
Nice one, I think.
Thanks. I've been saving it since the bar. What say you, amigo? And he's running away.
And right towards that crowd of blue-robed figures. Son of a dung beat.
We gotta stop him before he makes it there. Do you have anything on you?
Me? No, I had a notebook, and your ridiculous questioning did a number on that. Aren't you a cop? Don't you have a stun gun?
I'm a private investigator, not a cop. Not anymore. I got it.
Is that a tiny burger?
Nope. It's a Slider. Get it? Because
Come on, let's get him.
All right. You aren't getting away this time.
Hey, watch out, y'all. Millipede coming through.
Look out!
Oh, no.
You, think he's all right?
No, I do not. Well, at least my notebook's fine.
I mean, maybe we should call
Mr.
some...
Silva, he looks like a blueberry scraped off a muddy boot.
Noted. Looks like his friends are gone, avoiding any undue attention, it seems. Speaking of which, you never told me about your connection to the Blue Hanky Brigade.
I don't know what you're...
Don't play games with me. I'm not very good at games. I've lost solitaire more times than I'd like to admit. You've been keeping secrets from me ever since I drank that disgusting bowel cleanser at the bar. I bet you do drink.
Actually, I don't. And it isn't disgusting. It's very good for you. Fine, Mr. Silva. I'm not who I say I am.
Aha! I knew it. You're an undercover cop.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
Why are you chasing these cobalt bedrolls around? Are they part of some new crime syndicate?
Something like that. Let me see his arm.
Hopefully the right one. It's the only bit of him left. It's a glowing tattoo. And that diamond shape. He must be with
the fold.
Ah, jeez, I was almost there. Can I just have this one revelation, please? I've been wearing these clothes all week. The laundry in my building's on the fritz. I need this.
First of all, TMI. And secondly, if they're with the fold, I think I know where they're heading. Or if not, then who to ask.
All right. Where to?
No, Mr. Silva. I can't have you endangering yourself over any of this.
Gina, May I call you Gina?
Well, only my friends call me.
Gina, I'm going to tell it to you straight. I need to get back in the detective saddle, all right? Or find the saddle in the first place. Either way, I have a trail to follow and a need to ride. You follow me?
No.
And you could use some backup. And seeing as we've gotten this far, it looks like you're stuck with me. This is what I do. I investigate. So, are you in?
Fine, Mr. Silva. But don't slow me down. And get changed into some cleaner clothes, please.
But Gina, this downpour has been the only washing machine I've needed all along. A walking air dry, and I'll be right as rain. Kismet, I tell ya. Kismet. Who are these blue-robed creeps? And what are they plotting? And what does the mysterious Regina Gray have to do with it? And furthermore, will Neil make rent and possibly even get his washer fixed? Find out next time on Neil Silva, Private Eye.
That was a real hoot. I'm on pins and needles for what happens next. I mean, I'm well aware myself, sure, but I'm still on pins and needles. That should say something. I'll leave y'all to mull over what's next for the Darren Duo with a commercial break. When we get back, we'll shift gears from this experimental segment to something tried and true. Well, it was tried and true before the ransacking and the fire. You know what? You'll have to take my word for it. And if that's not enough, we'll pull out the crucible and put it to the test once more. That is, after a word from our sponsors.
Bugs are a huge part of everyday life here in the Swamplands, be they for transportation, construction, agriculture, manufacturing, or even companionship. Bugs are the threads that make up the fabric of our very society. Hi, I'm Pascal Case, founder and CEO of Bug Fixer. I'm in the business of making Bug Fixer the one and only name in bug repair throughout the Swamplands. Do you or a loved one have a bug who's ailing and in need of service? Does your bug's identity chip need an upgrade? Do you work in a field where one network outage is all that stands between you and a horde of uncontrolled beasts? We're here to help. Just call, message, or come into one of over 100 locations throughout the Swamplands. Our technicians are top of their field and ready for anything at a moment's notice. Just fill out an order, show them the problem, and leave them to their craft. And presto, your chitinous friend is as good as new. It's that easy. We're offering free identity chip resets with any major repair or upgrade. So if you're on the fence about the personality or temperament of your bug, we'll wipe it clean, free of charge. Does your child have a rowdy ladybug who just won't behave? Is there a confused spider on your worksite making messes instead of cables? Everybody deserves a clean slate now and again, even bugs. We're Bug Fixer, the best fix for broken bugs.
And we're back. It's finally time to dive back into another chapter, or first chapter as it were, of one of our ongoing segments, Into the Mire. Each episode, I'll assail you with a dark chronicle of things that plague the everyday Swamplander. No stone unturned, we will give focus to those things that fear us and speak them aloud. We'll strengthen ourselves to their sinister, silent influences and learn to rise above them. Out on the edge of the dome is a line between salvation, a road back to hearth and home, and the abyss. The endlessly sprawling Evermarsh silently dominates those who reach out beyond that edge. It's been known since the Tinderbox era, the age of the settlers, as the Verge. It's a realm of promise, though what it's promising can often be unclear. Is it a promise for a respite, a launching point for the hopeful and intrepid to set off into the uncharted unknown? Or does it promise ruin, a contract with man and marsh since time immemorial? Supposedly, the city keeps the dome safe from all sorts of beasties with an invisible wall. No major threats can pass into the dome as long as the hive's tower stands. But where does the dome start and end? Is the Verge within the dome or without? For the developers, the answer's simple. Our land is safely within the dome, and with a spectacular view of the sprawling Evermarsh to boot. But it ain't that simple, is it? For many, the realities of life ain't so clear-cut. Most folk work to provide for their loved ones, sometimes at the expense of their own safety. They'll travel to where few have gone before if it means available work and a steady paycheck, no matter the cost. Without further ado, I present to you, dear listener, a tale from the Swamplands. Axemen of the Verge. Most city folk don't make it out beyond the sprawling expanse of trees, knees, and roadways at the city center. Even fewer can claim to have made the trek to many of the sundry settlements throughout the dome. But beyond even those flickering candlelit bastions is a world so wide, so wild, that mankind can hardly begin to imagine its wonders, its terrors. Then there are those apprehensive few who answer the siren's call at the edge of the world. The songs there speak of growth, prosperity, and most importantly, remuneration for heeding that call. So it is for the contracted workers of Cypress Landing, a development square on the edge of home and the void. Touted as the premier luxury settlement for swampland bigwigs, the getaway looks out upon the rivers and reeds of the Evermarsh. Untold creatures and currents are at play just beyond the walls of its opulent villas. A caravan of the contracted set out from the far edge of the city's industrial sector. A dozen men were huddled in a cramped, covered wagon. They smoked various herbs from crummy cigarillos. Their rough overalls and wide-brimmed hats rubbed roughly on their leathery skin. They all wore matching films of sweat in the heat of the sweltering midsummer afternoon. This was the first voyage to the Verge for Eli Beck. It took a closed factory and an unexpected child to send Eli to the edge of the world. Well, his world. The city was ajar, with all the food and dirt one could ever need to make life from. But when the food became scarce and the dirt dried out, somebody had to open the lid. And before he knew it, Eli was heading off to build the dreams of others for a chance to start one of his own. It'd be hours till the caravan had reached the Verge. The crew busied themselves with humming or idle chit-chat. Else, silence. After long enough, the energy of the group fell into place. Many instinctively sussed out where the others hung their hats, so to speak. Without so much as a grunt or mumble from him, Eli was quickly branded as the sole greenhorn of the crew. The others needled him or warned him of their destination, as was tradition. If you ever see a shadow from above, dive into the muck.
They're tall-winged reapers that'd make a snack out of you. Noted.
You looking to swim with a scaly seductress? I hear the channels are full of them. Eli was a sibling of many. He took this ribbon in stride.
Don't think the missus would be too happy. But if I can find her a matching scaly suitor, I'm sure we could make an arrangement.
The crew cackled and hollered. They busted each other's chops for a stretch till a hacking cough cut through the reveling. They fell silent. Eli turned to the front of the wagon, searching for the source. A heavily tanned, leathery veteran stared him down from under the brim of a rawhide hat. Large and sinewy, the elder looked like he was carved from an ancient hunk of wood. Eli's fresh smile faded. The man spoke sternly, slowly. His words fell out of his grizzled jowls like molasses from a spout. I'm hoping you got any rotten notion of what you signed up for. Have you, son?
Oh, well, I think so.
You think so?
Hoping to make a bit of money to get things right with my wife. And seeing as I got a kid on the way and all, I figured...
You'd risk your life for it. For your hopes and your figurines. Is that about right?
Yes, sir.
The figure snorted and spat on the wood slats of the wagon's bed. He continued. If you want to make it back home to your sweetheart and your grubbling, know this. Everything, and I mean everything you hear about the lands beyond the verge, is true. And if it ain't, there's nothing stopping it from proving true in time. He turned to the rest of the crew and raised his voice. His spout dripping molasses turned to shovels slinging mud. And that goes for the rest of you. Even you step out beyond the sight, expect only ruin. I don't want to head back at the end of this stint with any fewer workers than are presently sitting in this here wagon. Is that clear? The group mumbled clumsily. Well... They pulled themselves together enough for a patchwork chorus of yesers. Good. The grizzled figure settled in once more. Eli sighed and peered out of the back of the wagon for a good while in contemplation. Other than scattered coughs and whispers from the crew, the rest of the trip proved to be silent and somber. The caravan reached the site at sunset. The massive trees and thick undergrowth dissolved bit by bit, making way for amber sunlight to wash over the land. Eli stepped out of the wagon with his compatriots. A half-dozen other wagons in the caravan spilled forth their respective crews. For the first time in his life, Eli laid eyes upon that forbidden world, a mouth gaping wide across a dizzying expanse, a storm caught in a silently furious moment. This was the Evermarsh. His brow furrowed as he spoke aloud.
It's just a big marsh. A whole lot of nothing.
The previous wagon mate sidled up to him and spoke in hushed tones.
Well, sometimes, sure. Walk out there yourself if you want to see the rest. But don't let the elder catch you, else you'll wish you'd never come back.
He patted Eli on the shoulder and sauntered off to the axeman camp. Eli turned the other way and hiked over to the worksite itself. Plenty of progress had been done already. Nearby trees were hacked at for lumber, brush was cleared, the ground was leveled, and a number of structures had already been built. Fancy fold designs were meshed with old swamp architecture, presenting the prospective buyer with a quaint getaway that weren't too cheap or rugged. The project would prove quite the draw, if all went well. But there was work to be done now, assuredly. Tomorrow, the mancers and contractors would pepper the axemen with deadlines, specifications, condescension, and whatever harassment came to mind. Still, a job's a job. Survive the week, and you'd be back home safe and sound. Eli slung his axe over his shoulder and hiked up his satchel straps. Time to relax at camp before the terrors of toiling tomorrow. As the sun set low over the horizon, somewhere beyond even the Evermarsh, the workers of the verge began settling in. Out by the edge of camp, only a few hundred feet from the shoreline, did the laborers pitch rings of tents. In the center of each one was a roaring fire. They set up wood hunks and log ends for stools dotted around each blaze. All sorts of laborers, from carpenters to diggers to stone cutters, encircled the bonfires. If not for the heat, then for company. Their banner was less the sigils on their pay stubs than the experience they were sharing, standing on the edge of the world. Sure, others traveled daily through the nearby waterways and trade routes to far-off distant lands, but few could claim to have tackled the Evermarsh head-on. They were a hair's breadth from possible annihilation. The laborers sang, danced, and played old tunes on various strings, pops, and drums. The combined energies of being cooped up in wagons, meeting for the first time, and camping on a razor's edge melded into a manic exuberance that was infectious. Admittedly, the drinking helped. Most were supping here and there, but a number of workers downed their flagons like it was their last night in this world. Chief among them were the newly arrived axemen. While Eli wasn't normally one for drink, at least nothing beyond the occasional friendly pint, he matched his newly found brethren something fierce that night. They sang, cheered, and stomped for hours. Then, one by one, the varied workers snuffed out their fires and matriculated into their tents. Work tomorrow, then play could come again. And yet, this did little for the axemen, save hush their festivities to a low rumble. But eventually, as only their bonfire remained, the crew sat silently in their happy drunken stupor. They smiled to one another, content with their night of revelry. Then, after a good stretch of contemplation, one of the axemen let out a hearty laugh. He wore ratty suspenders, rolled up sleeves, and had a misshapen eye patch below a sun-bleached bandana. He spoke to the lot.
Figured y'all be too yellow to stay out so late, I did. Never took yous for the brave types. Nope. No, sir. Especially not you.
He laughed and pointed a warty finger at Eli. Eli turned around in response, looking for the coward behind him, before eventually realizing that he was the object of ridicule. This brought on hearty laughs from the crew, before one by one they shushed each other back down. Eli toughened up with the look of a baby boxer, leading to more chuckles from the circle. He remarked,
I ain't scared of nothing. Nope, nothing. Matter of fact, there ain't nothing out there but a whole lot of nothing. Am I supposed to be scared of all that nothing?
This quieted the lot of them. Their faces were somewhat sterner than before, and after a bit of side-eyeing in the group, one of the older axemen leaned forward. His hair was silver and tied in a ponytail, and his clothes were covered in patches. He spoke at first to Eli, then to the group at large. Just 'cause you don't see nothing don't make it any safer, son. Sometimes it's what you don't see that'll get you. I've heard of a beast that soars through the night, bigger than a house and fast as a pond hawk. You'll be pitching out beyond the verge, listening for any critters, when suddenly, wham! You're in its clutches. It's silent as a shadow and deadly as the grave. The crew nodded solemnly. Another axeman threw in his 2 cents. He was thick with fat and muscle, and all to boot, but his voice belied his outside appearance. He spoke softly in a high tenor.
The waters are deep and endless. No one knows for sure what's out beyond all the reeds and rivulets. Even if you could find your way and not get lost, you'd have to tangle with all sorts of nasty beasties. Serpents that swim below, phantoms from above. They say there are fish out there who can overturn a boat with a blast of water. They control it. They're masters of the currents. Even with a boat and crew, you'll never make it out far enough, let alone make it back.
The group grunted and murmured in approval. Then, suddenly, the man in the eye patch stood up. He faced Eli, stating,
You don't believe it though, do we? Or is it true? Did the old axeman scare the wee one? What'd you say, boy? You scared of the old wives' tales, huh?
Eli stood up and faced the axeman. Others rose to their feet in case anything went south. But after a tense pause, Eli spoke, eyes locked with the single, uncovered eye of the axeman.
I ain't scared of nothing. Didn't I say it? And I'll show you all the nothing in the world.
He spoke to the group at large.
Let's go, y'all. I'm gonna go piss in the channel. Should be just fine if y'all watch the sky, right?
The group was tense, but in tentative agreement. Eli trudged past the ring of tents, and the crew followed. Before long, the fire's light failed to follow the group, save for a brief flicker and reminder some hundreds of feet away. Eli strutted brazenly, making a show of his bravery, before the ground beneath them became muddy and soupy. The others slowed down bit by bit, stymied by the muck. Just as the mud looked like it was going to swallow whole any further trespass, Eli turned back to the crew. The majority of them were a few yards back, their eyes adjusting to the partial moonlight. Eli hollered at his brethren.
You see? Mud. Nothing more. Good enough for yous?
A few cheered while others waved him to return. He had made his point. Eli turned back around and surveyed the ground before him. Now that his eyes had adjusted to the low light, he saw his path ahead. The mud had dried up a few feet forward and stayed fairly dry a few hundred more to the water's edge. He turned back to the crew and declared to the lot of them,
The ground's dry. I'm gonna piss in that river.
They were no longer cheering him on. Many hollered that he had made his point and waved him back. He gestured them to come forward and join him. When they didn't, he waved them off and went ahead on his own. The ground was rough and dry. Dirt caked up in waist-high ridges along both sides, guiding him forward to the water's edge. After another minute of stumbling forward, he was there. Ahead of him, the water stretched out toward a massive wall of reeds and marsh grass. The river snaked ahead, splitting into a dozen tributaries, each more circuitous looking than the last. He unbuttoned his fly and did the deed, whistling while doing so. As he finished up, the hair on the back of his neck stood on end. He peered into the water, searching for any serpents or seductresses. He turned to the sky behind him. Not a shadow to be seen. As a matter of fact, the moonlight finally seemed bright in the darkness of the night. From here, he could see the mass of trees at the edge of the dome. They seemed malevolent, yet inviting. How could such a knot of twisted wood and bracken be any safer than the open air? The night was beautiful and clear. Eventually, his eyes panned down to where his brethren had been waiting for him. Only they were no longer there, deep in the mud. Instead, a lone figure stood at the spot where the mud dried, much closer than the others had made it. It was backlit by the distant bonfire. Its orange glow rimmed the dominating silhouette. Even from here, after less than a day's travel, Eli knew who this hulking form was, watching him from the path back to camp. He uttered to himself aloud,
The Elder.
The Elder reached out toward Eli, but fear had finally awoken in the greenhorn. Somehow, the Verge held no more fear for him. Instead, every story or tale he'd heard throughout today came together in one man. To him, in that moment, the retribution of the Elder's fury would be worse than the culmination of any and all tall tales from the Evermarsh. Eli stepped back, but his foot dipped deep into the sink. He stumbled forward to find purchase and found a particularly large mound of dirt before him. The Elder saw Eli stumble and stepped toward him. In that moment, the Elder paused. He looked at the dirt path, knelt down, and touched it. He raised to his feet and hollered at the greenhorn, "Get back here, Eli. You're in a mess of trouble." Eli's fear took control. He scrambled to hide behind the dirt mound. Maybe if he waited, the Elder would leave, or he could sneak around to the other side. It was then that the ground shook. The dirt path beneath him quaked suddenly as he held onto the mound for dear life. As the shaking subsided, he heard the Elder holler once more, "This is your last chance, Eli. I'm coming for you." Eli waited, slowed his breathing. After a moment, he peered over the mound to the path. The Elder was in full sprint towards Eli. While his gait was lurching, he had a lot more energy in him than Eli could have ever imagined. Eli stepped forward once more to make a break for it. He slipped on a patch of mud and fell face first towards the mound. His hands reached out for purchase, and his fingers caught a ridge along the mound's side. It was in that moment that the thought occurred to him.
This ain't no mound, and it sure ain't dirt.
The ridge beneath his fingers slid down, revealing beneath it a shimmering orb as tall as him. It held in it a massive pupil that shone a radiant crimson in the moonlight, like a giant's ember still glowing from a city-sized bonfire. Eli let out a wail. He scrambled along the scaly ground he once thought to be dirt. It shifted beneath his feet, causing him to roll back toward the sink. Just as his back touched the water's surface, he felt something grip him from his front. The elder stood above Eli, holding him by the shirt and hanging onto the giant eye for dear life. His face shone in the moonlight. Its creases were folded like the roots of a live oak, contorted in a look of genuine concern. He wheezed heavy, labored breaths before exclaiming, "Go! Get out of here, you idiot!" The elder swung Eli back onto the creature's back onto the path, and hung onto its eye for dear life. Eli stumbled forward, and as he began to catch his footing, the world beneath him rumbled. He heard an incredibly deep growl below as the creature started shaking back and forth. Eli fell again, gripping a scaled ridge along its back. He chattered to himself,
How big is this thing? It's gotta be hundreds of feet long.
The shaking rattled him to the bone, but after a few more seconds, it subsided. Eli righted himself, still woozy from the tremors, and turned back to the elder, who was still holding on tight. He turned to Eli and said one last time, "Last chance, kid. No more do-overs." Eli stared a bit longer at the elder. He was wheezing and hacking a storm. As Eli stood on that precipice of indecision, the ground shifted once more. Then his adrenaline kicked in. He nodded to the elder, turned back to camp, and took off. The fury continued once more. The scaly ridge beside Eli's feet swung left and right as he bolted to the far end of the beast's tail. His feet weaved between the gaps in its ridges so as not to trip on any protrusion. Its growls grew louder with the increased shaking. Just as Eli reached the start of its tail, he could see its shaking was much more intense than before. A tail the size of a building raised out of the mud. Eli gripped a ridge just in time to save himself from rolling off its back. It slowed its movements, its tail some 20 feet in the air. Eli took his chance. He darted along the length of its tail, hoping with all of his heart that he could make the jump into the mud and make it out in time. He reached the tip of the tail's walkable length. As he took one last step, leaping into the air toward the mud below, the beast let out a devastating roar. The cacophony made his ears ring wildly. Then, its tail swung monstrously fast beneath him. One of its 2-foot-high ridges swept his feet out from under him. He could feel a sickening crunch in his ankle as the tail swing spun him around like a top through the air. The world hurtled wildly around him, and a moment later, he slammed into the squelching mud below. Eli awoke the next day in the medical tent of the construction site. A woman in ornate robes and a clammy man in a suit chastised him for a good while. He tuned it all out, nodding mindlessly and peering between the tent's open flaps. He could barely see the reeds and sky of the Evermarsh in the distance, now lush and vibrant in the summer midday. Back to life, to living. They asked him all sorts of questions. What were you thinking? Whose fault was this? Where's blah blah blah? It must have been his name. He didn't make it. Eli told them any pertinent bits of information. They spewed back all sorts of statistics about the creatures that can get this close to the dome, called the story an impossibility, a wives' tale, a myth. But Eli wasn't too bothered. He knew what he saw, and even if nobody believed him, there was nothing could be done to change his mind. After they got whatever it was they wanted, the interlopers left him to his injuries. Sometime later, around sunset, his fellow crewmen joined his bedside. They were kind enough, telling him all sorts of antics to keep spirits up. But as the sun set on the verge, the majority went off to their revelry once more. Only the man with the eye patch remained. He'd been silent for much of the visit. It was only when everyone else set off did he finally speak his mind. "So, the elder?" Eli turned to the reeds once more, inside.
Save me from it. After gone to the waters, I reckon.
The axeman leaned in closer to Eli and spoke in hushed tones. He asked, "What do you think it was? A beast? Some foul creature of the marsh?" Eli spoke at first, then turned to face the axeman.
I think there are some things in this life best left to the wilds.
Eli lowered his head to the pillow and spoke vaguely, as though to nobody in particular.
Go ahead and tell him whatever you want. Can't come close to the truth. But that ain't bad. If we really knew what was out there, we may never leave home. Paint it how you like and add it to the others.
The axeman in the eye patch sighed to himself, stood up, and walked through the tent flaps to rejoin his brethren. Just before he returned to the ring of firelight, he looked out to the water and reeds of the marsh. And there, far across the gulf between their world and that of the wilds, he saw something peering out from the water. Two massive, glowing red eyes staring him down. But within one eye was a shadow. The silhouette of a man reaching for something to hold on to. So often do we feel powerless in our everyday lives, be it the fickle tides of society's eddies tossing us about like so much flotsam, or the monolithic dominance of nature and its wildly shifting fortunes. Who, then, do we look to for our sense of control, of worth, if not in titles or status, nor the supremacy of forces beyond our control? Then where? Hard to say, isn't it? For me, the answer is somewhat simple. The question ain't, no, but we can't claim ownership over life's questions, just in how we answer them. It's people, not in convincing them, beating them, proving things to them. No. We listen, we ask, we lean on them, they lean on us. Our power as people is in seeing one another and finding that which binds us, instead of that which sets us apart. Ain't no guidebooks in life, but we still got each other. Well, dear listener, that's the end of our tales for today. But how's about I wrap up our show with a bit of a bow, so to speak? Our topic of the day was the Swamplands. Straightforward, right? And yet, how could it be? No, this is just the start. There's so much to delve into in this strange and wonderful and terrible world of ours. Will we map every inch of it together, you and I? Who's to say? Life's got no promises. But I'll tell you this much. If you're searching for your way through the Swamplands, or wherever you are, and you're looking for a friendly voice in the night, I'll be there. Whatever way, however I can. I'll do what I do, you do you, and hopefully we'll learn a thing or two along the way. We got a long ways to go, but I believe in us. In me. In you. That's all for now. Till next time, may you make your tale what you wish it to be. This is Benjamin Gaunt, signing off. Good night.
Tales from the Swamplands was written, produced, and, well, pretty much anything else by me, Sam McGrath. Music was written and performed by Morphalia. You can check out their music on Spotify or any updates on most social media platforms at Morphalia. That's MORPHALIA. Guest performer this week was Charlie McGrath. For any other updates to the Swamplands, you can follow me on most social media at the Swamplands or at talesfromtheswamplands.com. Thanks for listening.